All right. Welcome to an episode of Survival Mode. And I have to say, this gentleman that I'm about to introduce has a little history with me, as when I was diagnosed with my brain tumor, I didn't know what to do. I was shocked. It was a gut punch. And I had a friend on Facebook after I posted that said, you need to reach out to this organization, and it's CTBA, Connecticut Brain Tumor Association. And this gentleman, Greg Shimer, reached out to me, and I'm going to just at the beginning say that he was very upfront with me, and I so valued it. And he shared a lot of things with me and was very, very helpful. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to steal his thunder, because he's just really helpful. So welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Todd. And it's great to meet you, and I'm pleased to be a part of your journey. Just for the record, just to clarify things, and for the record, this happens all the time. It's the Connecticut Brain Tumor Alliance. So CTBTA is the name, and it gets confused all the time with all other the acronyms that happen. And if it was like the KYXLGA, people would probably understand it better. But because CT and BT and A kind of flow together, it's just kind of whatever. So it's not the KY organization; it's the CTBTA organization. Okay.
Thank you for correcting me. Definitely have some brain issues for sure. And so, Greg, tell me a little bit about how you got involved with the organization, kind of going back.
Well, it's funny because it really goes back. And the way it goes back is that Tracy Gamer Fanning, who was my wife, my late wife, was one of the founding members of the CTBTA. She founded it with Jennifer Pace, who is now the president of the CTBTA and also a brain tumor patient. And two other friends, Stacy Marinol and Kim Hodnett. And they created the CTBTA as a result of their own experiences. Stacy and Kim lost their mother to a brain tumor about a year and a half previously. Excuse me. But Tracy's and my story was way farther back. We dated when we were about 19, 20 years old. And we were the wrong side of the tracks type of relationship. So I was in Eastern Connecticut, she was in Western Connecticut, and you can already just see how that went. I had long hair, ripped jeans. I worked in a bar. She was the hostess at the bar. And somehow, by the grace of God, I met her, and it was an amazing experience when we were kids. Dated on and off for about 2 years. We broke up near the end because she was graduating college. She graduated from Clark University, and she wanted to become a broadcast journalist. And I wanted to go into politics. Excuse me. So that didn't really work out so good in that respect. These days now, then no. So we broke up, and we broke up relatively amicably, but there was a hole somewhere in the back of your head, like, I wonder. And throughout the years, I would Google her just to see how she's doing, right? And her maiden name was Gamer. So if that tells you that I was up against a lot, because there's a crap ton of gamers out there, people playing games. And I just never found her. And even then, it was more just to see how she was doing and how things were going. And because I did with other high school friends. Now, keep in mind, this is pre-Facebook. Okay. So that was what you did. You Googled people like, oh, I was wondering what's going on with Bob Smith. And you find out there's 14 million Bob Smiths. So just off and on, whatever. And around 2006, I hit pay dirt. I found her because she had hyphenated her maiden name to her married name, which is Fanning. And it turns out she was here in West Hartford. She was actually on the community board for Channel 5, the local access channel. And so I reached out, and I owned an ad agency at the time, a small one. And she was working for a publication. She was not working as a broadcast journalist. She found it to be a tiresome and difficult position to have professionally if you wanted to have a family, and she did. So she got out of broadcast journalism. She actually worked with Diane Sawyer for a little while down in New York. And she had a fantastic experience, but it just got to be too much. So she moved back here to West Hartford with her husband at the time. She had a small boy. His name was Mitch. And we just reconnected as friends. And we had lunch in May of 2006, and I caught up with her, and it was just like, wow, it's the same young woman I knew then, just a lot more confident, a lot more well-spoken, and she knew what she was doing. And I felt the same way. And it was really great to catch up with her just as friends. Later on that year, my marriage started to fall apart and her marriage started to fall apart. We didn't really connect a whole lot during that time, but after my marriage officially fell apart, I called her up to see how she was doing with hers, and I wanted to just touch base. That's when I found out from her receptionist that she was in the hospital and she had a brain tumor. And it was like, holy shit. So later on, I found out all the other details, but she had been convalescing at a nursing home up in she was one of the St. Francis ones. I can't remember it. And she was learning how to walk again. And so just on a lark, I went down to her house down on Wallbridge Road in West Hartford, and she had just gotten back like maybe 2 days previously from physical therapy where she had learned to walk again, and she was a mess. She was upset to see me. She, would have preferred to have been presented in a better way, according to her words. I thought she was beautiful. And we just talked, and we talked for hours, and she told me everything. And so that was the start of it. During that time between 2000, that was September, October 2006, we officially started dating, quote unquote, for the longest time. And, our children both had to figure this stuff out, as most kids of divorce do. In that, I remember her coming up to my house up in Brooklyn, Connecticut. I used to live up in deep Eastern Connecticut. And we would talk back and forth. And she wanted to do something, now that she finally got her head on her shoulders a little bit, she wanted to do something positive. And that's where a golf tournament came into play. I owned an ad agency. I gave her my thoughts on what the name could be. I helped design the first logo. Trust me when I say it is a significantly better version than what I designed initially. I designed the first website, way better now than it ever was before. But that's where she and I together came and started talking about the power of choice. And this is where the real power comes from, because, she had every reason to just sit there and do nothing and suck her thumb all day. I had every reason to be angry because of my divorce. And I'll confess, I had my moments, trust me, about things. But we decided to try and do something positive. And in doing something positive, that's where she met with Jen and Stacy and Kim, and they worked with their husbands and their uncles and fathers and created this golf tournament. And that was the first initial golf tournament in 2007. I want to say it was at Winterberry Hills, where we raised 80 grand. And everybody was excited, like, oh my God, 80 grand, we raised a whole bunch of money, which is a lot of money, that's true. But in the world of cancer research, that's the coffee fund. And that's when we said, okay, let's do this instead. And that's where the Connecticut Brain Tumor Alliance came out of, from all of that. So sorry for the long-winded explanation.
No, that's fantastic. So I was listening to an interview with Tracy and yourself, and there's some things and I'm going to either attach it to this podcast, hopefully. I think that's where my heart says. So if you listen toward the end, you'll hear an amazing interview from somebody that just has an energy and really wanted to make a difference in helping support people in brain tumors. But she really referenced how your relationship with her really helped her. So she gets a brain tumor diagnosis. Her marriage is having challenge on the way out or done, right? And all of this happens all at the same time. And then her father passes away too. So, talk about a trifecta, and then you get diagnosed with a brain tumor and blessings from above. But she really wanted to change the face of brain tumors.
Yeah,
right?
She wanted to make a difference. I mean, when you're looking in the mirror at the end of the day, right, you really have two choices. You can either choose to be a part of things or choose not to be. And if you choose not to be, that's entirely your prerogative. And I understand why you would not want to or anything. But most people want to make a difference somewhere. They want to know that their life matters. there are what, 7 trillion people on this planet right now. Forget the umpteen millions of trillions of people who have been here before. And you could probably name 12 people, historically speaking, right off the top of your head, like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Rosa Parks, things like that. So everybody wants to have, most people want to have, they want to know that their life matters. And Trey knew she was going to die. They gave her a 3 to 5 year lifespan at that time. It's like playing roulette. Okay. And so you do that. And then you have a choice again. So you have this choice of, I've 3 to 5 years to live. What am I going to do with that time? And Trey chose the light. Trey chose to be a part of things, to help people, to learn from the experiences that she had, because before the Connecticut Brain Tumor Alliance was formed, there are support groups, and the hospitals do their best. They really do. But the support groups in general are not, for the lack of a better term, an encouraging environment. It's like, what do you do when you get this? And what do you do when this happens? And there's none of that, like, hey, let's go out for a walk and have some cupcakes, like Trey would suggest. Or go out and have this night at a farm, at a horse farm, where Jen and Stacy and Kim put together this amazing event with other friends of ours that had nothing but horses, and this absolute experience of positivity and light. That's really the decision. That initial decision grew to all that. So it wasn't just Trey, it was a lot of people, but Trey was definitely one of the beacons.
Yep. Yeah. So it sounds like, and she mentioned in her interview, and you and I were talking about this before, that, she kind of lived from scan to scan, right?
Right.
Like a lot of brain tumor survivors. And tell me a little bit about what that was like for both her and you together.
Well, again, she was given 3 to 5 years in 2006. She lived all the way until literally, although she passed away in October of 18, she really started dying in early September of 18, because of hospice and all the other fun stuff. So from 2006 till July of 2018, we would go roughly every 90 days for an MRI. And in the beginning, it was anxiety. It was, oh my God, very heavy, very difficult. We got lucky. We have friends, who got us in late. We would go in at 7:00 at night at the MRI scanner, hear back from the doctors maybe a day or two later. And it was a source of anxiety for us. As it went on, 2009, 2010, 2011, it became a date night. So like we would do it, and we would have yogurt afterwards at Sweet Frog nearby the street or something like it. And I would always go in there. I want people to understand that this is not, and although, COVID aside, it is not an ill-considered request to be there with the people whom you care about in the MRI room. You obviously have to take off your medal, okay? And you obviously have to, abide by the rules. But it was super important to me. It was sort of important to her, but it was important to me because I felt like I was being there for all the reasons. And I would see the ghost of my mother, who had passed away in 2015 afterwards. And I would talk to her, and I would see the ghost of her father, who had passed away in November of 2006 in the car accident. And it was just like, all right, we're going to be okay here. We're going to do this. And I couldn't do much. The only thing I could do literally was like hold on to her ankle and let her know I was there. And when we were done, we would go get yogurt. So that was our 90-day window. And so it went from heavy to date night to almost as road as taking out the garbage near the end, because it was like, yeah, okay, every 90 days. And, there's a certain semblance of hubris in that, because, by January of 18, it was becoming like, oh, we have another one to do kind of stuff. And you had forgotten how heavy it could be. When we were driving down to Yale in July of 18, something changed. We felt it heavy. It felt like we were going to the principal's office because we were in trouble. The both of us felt this, it wasn't just me. And that's when we knew. And Trey could have lasted a lot longer. She could have done extra chemo. She could have done more surgery. She could have done, more radiation, whatever. But as you know, as a patient, it's also super exhausting to be one at full time. And she felt like she had made her mark. And so she did what she did, and we prepared for the next step.
Okay. Wow. So what was it like? Because I know that I've interviewed a lot of people that have actually had brain tumors. You're the first that I've had to date of a spouse caregiver, that was side by side. What was it like for you throughout this process?
Anxiety producing. Trey was really good at hiding her deficits. So she was paralyzed on her left side after her first surgery. She had this issue called clonus, which is where the legs vibrate like crazy, uncontrollably. She had headaches, she had seizures, she had problems, and they did manage to get them under control throughout the years. But she had to take significant amounts of seizure drugs. She was a medical marijuana advocate, as you might have seen in her past, and the reason why is because there's only so many opiates you can take and be drugged out for the entire day, where it's just stupid. So she started smoking pot, and holy cats, she got her life back. She really did good. So seeing all of that, I was never 100% off. Never. If we were in the most relaxing of scenarios, sitting at a beach and just holding each other's hands, or in bed and just watching TV, I was always at least 10% still on, because you never know when like the next seizure was going to hit, or she was going to have a problem, or things like it. Again, these were not numerous, but it happened enough where I had to pay attention. A great example was we went on a cruise in Alaska in 2007, and we were getting off the bus heading back to the boat, fortunately, and she hit her head on a beam, and she had a craniotomy on the left side. And I was like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And so I literally like grabbed her, firemen carried her into the boat, into the cruise ship, and got her into bed right away. Fortunately, no seizures, but she was in excruciating pain. She took a good 5 or 6, if not 7 Percocet, maybe with some Ativan, and I closed all the windows and everything. And I waited. I took her breath. I took her heartbeat. I watched her breath just to make sure she didn't have a heart attack from all the drugs that she took. And fortunately, she pulled through. But it's like, that was indicative. That's the worst case scenario. So in that's where it's like you're always watching for the big things and the small things. And other caregivers can understand this, where you're never 100% off. You're always paying attention, because if you don't, something will make certain you do. And then the other part of it is too, is that you realize that you lose your partner. Tracy was my partner, and was up until her dying day. But there were some things she just wasn't able to handle. She wasn't able to handle things like money and details, and certain areas of stress, things like that. So in lots of ways, I didn't just lose my wife, I lost my partner early on, who was invaluable to me. And I've talked with many caregivers about this many times, and they all say basically the same thing. They say that.
Anything else? Because you, in combination with, your experience with the CBTA, you talk to a lot of caregivers, you talk to a lot of survivors or newly diagnosed. What are some of the biggest challenges? First of all, we'll go with caregivers, and what is kind of your, kind of words of wisdom?
Sure. Caregivers. The first thing I would tell them to do is stay the hell off the internet. Do not Google what happens if I have a brain tumor or stuff like that, because that's a rabbit hole you do not want to go down. The other part of it is, as a caregiver, you have to be the first one to remove denial from the equation. Your husband, your wife, your mom, your dad, your child, God forbid, has a brain tumor. There is nothing about denial that will help. It's all about planning, action, education, a little bit of luck, some prayers here and there. But if you sit there in denial and do nothing, then you really will exacerbate the scenario. So caregivers, the one word I can give you is stay away from denial if you can help it.
Gotcha. That's great. I remember when we first talked, and I don't know if you probably did tell me, but I clearly did not Google my stuff. And I said, because that would take me down a rabbit hole. I gave my girlfriend and my ex-wife, who were good friends, I said, here's my chart. I didn't even dive into my chart. I just drove forward. And I said, you guys could Google and do whatever you want, but this is kind of where I'm going with it. For me personally.
No, and you did what most people don't do. You learned, you want to learn about it. Everybody wants to learn about the condition. You don't want to deny that part. But for God's sake, if you're going to drive down that road, go with a guide, go with somebody who knows what they're talking about. And that's one of the reasons why the CTBTA exists, because, although we're not medical professionals, we're not lawyers, we are people who can answer questions and connect people who can answer those questions, or at least try to.
Yeah. And I remember you clearly saying to me that, and it stuck with me, was, you're going to be different.
Yes.
And somebody's going to be messing with the CPU of your body. I remember that clearly. I was going through it and just honor that. And it was reassuring for sure.
Good.
And I remember, I said I wanted to help. And probably at that time, I probably wasn't at a place I had to deal with my own stuff. And you clearly said that this is hard. And I remember, and I said to myself, well, in my own head, I said, we do hard things and just move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that segues to, tell me, your wife passed and you are still extremely active with the organization. Tell me about your activity now, what you're currently doing and your role in the organization.
Sure. So to disclaim myself really quick, I'm not talking on behalf of the CTBTA. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about myself and my own roles and my own opinions here. Not to say that there's anything to worry about the CTBTA. It's just, nice about it. But that said, I am the recording secretary of the Connecticut Brain Tumor Alliance. I'm in the executive board. I've been a member of the Connecticut Brain Tumor Alliance as a board member. Gee whiz, I want to say about 7 years ago now. I've been involved with them, for the last 15. But as far as like my actual role grew as life went on. So although, yes, I developed the first website and the first logo, it has significantly gotten way better than I could have ever done. So I'm part of the e-board now, and I have been pushing for things like the patient-assisted funds, which is my personal thing. So going back to the $80,000 that we raised for the golf tournament, $80,000 is not a lot of money when it comes to research. It's a lot of money for any one of us, but it's not a lot of money when it comes to research. So we helped create these patient-assisted funds where 25, I'm just making these numbers up, 25,000 goes to Yale, 15,000 goes to CCMC, St. Francis, St. Vincent's, et cetera. And these patient-assisted funds are not there for the doctors. They're there for the patients. And this is where one of my most gratifying experiences with the CTBA exists, in that we get reports saying, hey, I got $500 from St. Francis through the CTBTA patient-assisted fund, and that helped me buy oil for the winter. Or, hey, I got $1,000 and I was able to pay my mortgage for 2 months or 1 month because I was too busy taking care of my kid and I had to leave my job, or I had to go on a job. It's those sorts of things. It's like, hot dog, we're doing something. I mean, we do support research. We do talk to researchers all the time and doctors and whatnot. But where our real efficacy is with the people on the ground, the ones who are doing this on a daily basis. And that's where I find most of my work's very gratifying. The other part that I do is I work with the volunteers, excuse me, like talking with you, where I help people come in as a volunteer, as an ambassador, because we are the Connecticut Brain Tumor Alliance. We're not the Hartford Brain Tumor Alliance. So we do have people like in Groton and in Putnam, Pomfret. We have people in New Haven. We have people in Torrington. We have one like almost down in the Fairfield County region. It's like, holy cats. So we want to make certain that all of our fingerprints are everywhere in Connecticut. And so I help coordinate that and encourage that. And people who want to be an ambassador, just look at our website and they can do it. And an ambassador does not have to be somebody who has a brain tumor or has been directly affected by a brain tumor. They can be doctors, dentists, lawyers, somebody who raises cats for a living. If they want to help, an ambassador can be that, and it doesn't cost them anything to do that. And so that's what we encourage too. Anybody who has a real passion for this sort of work is necessary. And that's what we want to do. We want to harness all that energy and bring it to bear so that way we can help more people.
That's fantastic. And and that is what, I'm going to be an ambassador for the organization and help people that have been touched by this. And what I love about our conversation that we had is I do feel, I've done a lot of research on, nonprofits and things like this. And some of these larger organizations donate to a lot of research. And I think they do have research, but what is important to me, personally, and this is not, a disclaimer, CTPA or anything like that, is when I was going through this, like, I had shock and awe, gut punch for sure, dealing with making some medical decisions. Hey, I got surgery. I'm going, I had a 2-week period between diagnosis and surgery. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm a fairly functional human being, by most parts. I have a job, and potentially I could not work. Like, this could affect my life.
Right.
And those are the things that, you worry about. Hey, paying the bills and being able to, food or all that. And what I love about the organization is they want to help patients and caregivers really function, and if they have needs, financial needs for sure. So,
right. And that's kind of one of the things we learned through Tracy's experience and through others. You can qualify for disability. I'm not saying you will, but I'm saying you can. There are insurance programs out there that will cover you. It was funny because Trey was diagnosed again in 2006. So that was before the ACA or Obamacare. So pre-existing conditions was a problem, no longer. So, there are lots of things out there that you can find. You just have to find the right educators and the right Sherpas for your experience. If you Google it, that's fine. I'm not saying don't Google, but what I am saying is don't read everything like it's, gospel. Reach out and actually talk to people about things, because everyone's experience is completely unique. But everyone's what's the word I'm thinking of? Imagination. Everyone's imagination, that rabbit hole that I'm talking about, that's where they go down and they can never get back up. So get out there and ask questions. And the CTBTA may or may not be able to help, but I think it's definitely one of your first calls.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put in the show notes the website for, to connect and go and check out any of the information there. So you talk to some people that are diagnosed, right?
Mm-hmm. All the time. Yeah.
So share with me a little bit about what that's been like for you.
It's gratifying. I mean, is it hard? Of course. It's almost funny because it goes right back to that choice I told you about before, where you have a binary choice in this case. Binary meaning left or right. There's no in between. And, nobody would blame me if I stepped away from this and said, you know what, I'm done. I've served my time. I'm done. I don't want to be reminded of Trey. I don't want to be reminded of what she went through. But what you have to understand is that first and foremost, Tracy was my wife, and I was devoted to her, and I still am. And in that, to honor her memory and to honor the memory of the other people who don't have that type of experience and relationship, and also to honor the people who are part of the CTBTA, because every one of them gives blood, sweat, and tears. Who am I to complain about my scenario? I was blessed. I had this incredible woman in my life who I should have only had for 3 years that I had for 12. And, I'm just so grateful for that. So in that, how do I honor a memory like that? I still keep taking calls. I still talk to people like you who are just getting started, who are just going through the pain. And do you ever see The West Wing?
The West Wing?
Yeah, you ever see The West Wing?
I have.
Okay. So you remember the part where Josh is starting to deal with alcoholism or the potential of alcoholism?
Uh-huh.
And Leo McGarity, the chief of staff, this is like one of my favorite shows, one of my favorite scenes, tells a story because he says, I'm an alcoholic too. And Josh looks at him like, whoa, what? And he tells a story and he says, yeah, there's this guy down in the hole, right? And he's screaming for help, 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 help. And the guy walks by and he throws a ladder down, but it's not big enough and he can't get out. So another guy comes down, walks by the hole a while back and calls the cops, but the cops aren't coming for a while. So a friend walks by, Leo says this to Josh, a friend walks by and jumps back into the hole with him. And the guy goes, what are you doing? Now we're both stuck in here. And he goes, yeah, but I've been here before and I know the way out. And that's where I feel I can contribute. At one point I was Josh and I've had others be Leo. Now it's my turn to be Leo, if I can be.
That's awesome. That is amazing. So tell me, for the listeners that maybe, that are going through this, what are some of the common things that when you're talking with a newly diagnosed or somebody who's going through some things, what are some of the things that you hear, some of the key things that you help guide people in, aside from definitely not Googling their brain tumor, which I support highly for sure. So tell me a little bit more.
If anything, learn the names of your brain tumor.
What you mean? What kind it is?
Yeah, well, I mean, just to know the kind, so that way you can win at Scrabble because it's a long fucking name. I
love it.
You try and figure out ogliodendroditis or whatever it is. And then you look it up on Webster's, you're like, oh, I win. What do I say? Gee, it really depends on the scenario. It depends on who they are. I mean, you had trouble, that's true, but you did not have trouble like other people have had trouble. I mean, I've met people who are absolutely despairing and don't know what to do, whether they're a patient or a caregiver. I guess what I try to do is I try to help them look at the mirror for just a moment and say, all right, is this worth it? Is the work worth it? Is surviving worth it? It may not be. And that's not my choice to make. And it's not my choice to encourage or discourage, but it's one of those things where it's like, hey, look, man, you called someone, I'm one of them, for help. And if that's what you want, then I'll do it. But the work is yours. And the work is you getting up. And I mean, this is the real work, right? The real work has nothing to do with surgery or, walks for 15 miles or any other shit. It's literally getting up in the morning and convincing yourself that the next 5 hours is worth your time. That's where the real work lives. And that's where the demons live. And that's where the angels live too. Again, Trey and I's experience, we didn't let anything pass, anything. If I had a moment to say I love you, I took it every time. And she did the same thing. We would cook, we would dance, we would take advantage of the 5 minutes we had with one another before the kids came home, kind of thing. And that's my lesson. And that's my encouragement of things. So as far as like, if somebody calls me up and says, hey, I need help, it's the first thing I do is tell me about yourself and tell me what you want.
I love it. The one thing too that, and I highly encourage anybody that's listening to this to listen to the interview with Tracy, and Greg is there with her during it, but it is an amazing interview. Her energy about living. One of the things that she said in there, and I kind of wrote down some things that really stood to me. She goes, every day that you're not dying, you're living.
Correct.
And so how you live is a choice. You could crawl in a ball in your bed, right? Or you could get up and experience some things. And
absolutely. Making a pie with your mother.
Having dinner.
Having dinner with a family friend you hadn't seen in a while.
Yeah. And honestly, when I was going through the initial thing, like of course I thought of this, what I had to go through, but honestly, it was the little things. It was the person that wheeled me down the hall that had a conversation with me. It was connecting with old friends. It was just having a normal, decent, regular, enjoyable conversation, walking and looking at experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's an interesting quote. You ever hear of Lily Tomlin?
Oh yeah, she was in 9 to 5 back in the
She was a
day,
9 to
right?
5. She was a 9 to 5. She was also in the West Wing. But she did some stand-up comedy back in the 70s. Now, I'm not dating myself that much. I'm 51, so I was 7 at the time, maybe 6. But she had a great quote where, and it's funny, you say this and most people go, oh yeah, of course, right? But until you're faced with it, until you're staring down the barrel of it, it means shit. So she had this one particular quote. She goes, if you're the winner of the rat race, if you're a winner of the rat race, you're still a rat. And I met this one guy who drove a Porsche, multi-millionaire, knew famous people, super duper duper, whatever. And then he got a brain tumor and he lost it all. And he could not stop commiserating about how much he lost. And as a result, he then lost his wife and his family because they just couldn't deal. And I'm not blaming them. I'm not saying what their decision was right or wrong or anything like it, but it's like, if you sit there and wait to die, you're gonna. And Trey and I, with her, chose to live regardless of the amount of time. And people say it's like, oh, that's easy. It's like, no, it's not fucking easy. It's getting up out of bed in the morning and brushing your hair and reminding yourself that you have a dental appointment in 3 weeks. Just because you're going to die doesn't mean you don't get your teeth brushed.
Right. Or you don't go out, have the dinner, do the dance, right?
Yep. Return the cart in the parking lot, help the old lady across the street. I mean, again, in my opinion, this is a binary situation. It is, you can choose to be sorry for yourself, or you can choose to do something else that fills your cup.
So tell me about it, because Tracy mentioned this in that interview too. Is she wanted to be different? She wanted to
That's true.
She would, and I tell you, I am not even doing any justice to this interview. After even my girlfriend listened to it with me, and she struggled when I was going through this, probably a little more than I did. She didn't know how to be with it, and neither did I, for sure. But she said that, hey, brain cancer needs a facelift. It was like, had this gray thing. I want to make it silver, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we need to talk about other things other than all of our symptoms all the time and all of our meds and all that. And granted, those are important. I'm not disparaging or discounting that. But more importantly, what I loved about what she shared was like, we need to learn how to live our time here. And
she came up with that quote. It's easy to live a full half life than a half full life. But that's about as pointy as you can get. I mean, the only difference between somebody who's going to die versus someone who's completely healthy right now, again, my opinion, is that the first one knows they're going to die. So with that particular thought in mind, whether it's going to be, again, in Trey's case, 3 years versus 12. In my mother's case, she was given like 5 years. She lasted 3. You have a choice. You are literally looking down the barrel and saying, all right, I have a choice. I can be this. I can be despondent and not do anything and not let the rest of my time on this earth count. Or I can try something else. And whether that's raising money or raising sheep or, going out and backpacking the Amazon forest. I mean, I have met some amazing people who have done some ridiculously amazing things when faced with that truth. By the way, none of them have said, I can't wait to go back to the office.
I know. And that's how I felt, honestly. And they, I kind of was thinking like, what do I viewed this as an eye opener. Like it's an eye opener, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I asked myself, like, what is the message here for me? And I think the missing piece was I don't have a Porsche or any of that, but I had the mentality of the guy that you were describing. Like, let me grind life out. And then I got to grind it, survival mode. That's why I named it because that's how I live my life. Work very, very hard. And I have to say, I didn't as much look at the experiences now. And I tried to share this with some people, like, listen, I don't know what the next 5 years of my life look like. And this was earlier on with the diagnosis. I don't know what that is. Right. And some people would say, like, well, none of us really know. We could get hit by a bus. I said, of course you can.
Yeah, says the one who's not facing cancer.
Right. Somebody that's not facing that, right? Like, right. But you don't think about it. But if you know when your expiration date is, or roughly there around, or kind of like, hey, at the time I was 48, let me think like, hey, a normal person probably lived, 80, maybe 70, just
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But then if you're like, oh, okay, I could be dead at 55, 53, whatever, you're going to live your life very different. And that's honestly part of a gift in a sense, because it makes you focus on what's important. Because a lot of people that don't have a diagnosis of anything, you're kind of go through their life just grinding it out, maybe like I was.
Grinding it out. And that's a good way to put it. I mean, I have 3 North Stars in my life. One of them is Sting, because he's a poet and a songwriter. The other one is Anthony Bourdain, because of his he loves food, and Trey and I loved food, and he loves to explore. He's not a traveler, right? Well, sorry, he's a traveler. He's not a tourist. That's the right way to say it. Because he'll go into like West Virginia and find the most amazing places in West Virginia. And the last one was Robin Williams. And Robin Williams in Dead Poet Society, struck me years and years ago, where he basically said, "Carpe diem," effectively, gather ye rosebuds while ye may. And again, it's an easy way to say it, knowing full well that I'm healthy, that I'm paying my mortgage, my kids are okay, blah, blah, blah. I understand what a privileged phrase that is for someone like me. But what I try to accentuate is I take that learning and I try to help people who are not as privileged as me. And maybe that's a privileged thing to say. But I really want to make certain that I use every moment of the life that I have been given to make certain that it matters. And to me, that means helping people and doing different things. And if it's raising money, is fine. But in a lot of cases, it's like, dusting off my neighbor's car in a snowstorm, just like, fuck it, why not? I've got the broom out, I've done my car, I can do my neighbor's car. Things like that, where those little tiny pieces of kindness eventually grow into something that you had absolutely no idea. And that's the interesting part about it. So why not continue doing that?
I think it's amazing that, you're continuing to help the organization, help other people, and help people that really need it, probably the most challenging time of their life. And
there was a time during that time where Trey and I had, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, we literally had to be able to see one another, we had to look in the ashtray and see how much change was in the car so we could buy gas to see one another. So we have been in challenging scenarios. I lost my house during my divorce. It was in the housing market of 2008. It wasn't my ex-wife's fault. It was the housing market. Tracy had challenges with her finances because of her ex-husband. Trust me when I say that this was not an easy path, and it still isn't. But I do have some inkling as to what it's like to have to go and talk to people about energy assistance to make certain that the lights stay on, or talking to the school counselor to help the kid with their next class because they're struggling because their mother or father are sick. So it's not all guns and roses here. There's some hard work behind it.
And it's doing some hard things and making hard decisions, right?
Yeah.
But also living life.
Absolutely.
Life for the moment.
One way or the other.
Greg, any final comments on the organization, on people that may be going through a new diagnosis, or any final words of wisdom?
First off, I want to point over my left shoulder, your right side, left shoulder.
Yeah,
that's actually a painting of Tracy right there that a friend of ours, Heather Alert, painted for her. I've kept it there since I've moved into my condo about 3 years ago. So shout out to Heather. Hi. That said, words of wisdom. Don't give up. When you're going through hell, keep going, because you'd be surprised what you find on the other end. And sometimes it's not always going to be pleasant, but it's something versus waiting. Trey and I had this particular phrase called playing defense and then playing offense. So that's appropriate considering a Super Bowl weekend, right? Playing defense was us waiting for the next shoe to drop, the next seizure, the next pharma bill that was $800, the next time the kid gets in trouble, the next time the lights get shut off, that kind of stuff. That's playing defense, is waiting for the next shoe to drop. When we learned how to play offense, that changed everything. And what I mean by playing offense is planning for the future, no matter how ridiculous it is. So if you have a terminal diagnosis and you're going to die in 3 years, plan some trip that you'll do in 5 years, because you'll be surprised if what happens is like, oh, hey, I'm here, kind of stuff. When you start planning and playing offense, it changes everything emotionally, psychologically, physiologically, everything that you could possibly think of, because now there's hope and not fear.
I love it.
Cool.
I love it. That's a
Todd, thank you for your great work. You're doing a wonderful job.
And, likewise, I look forward to working more closely with the am I saying it BTA?
CTBTA. There you go. CTBT.
I keep messing it up, but that is, I look forward to it, and you guys have been helpful in my journey. And we'll post how to reach out to them in the show notes, and I am going to do everything in my power to merge the interview, and it's really audio only with a photo of Tracy, but it really made my day. Every time I listened to it, it gave me a lot of hope hearing her and her words and her energy. So and I think it's just amazing the work you've done, that you continue to do, and helping others. So I
help others do the work. That's all I do. And Trey would have been very proud to have met you, Todd.
Yeah, I would have loved to have met her for sure. She sounds like an amazing, amazing woman. So thank you very much, Greg.
Take care, Todd.
My name is Jay Holt. I live in Hartford, Connecticut. I am the producer for Words to Give By, and my fellow producer Dan Schultz is engineering this interview, which is taking place at the Little Theater of Manchester in Manchester, Connecticut on the 29th of March, 2016. Would you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Tracy Gamer Fanning, and I am here with you in Manchester, Connecticut.
And would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Gregory Shimer. Greg's fine, and I'm here in Manchester, Connecticut as well.
Thank you both for joining us today. And we'll ask one question of each of you that we've asked most of the people who have sat down and spoken with us before we hear your story. And that question is, what does kindness mean to you? Let's go with you first, Tracy.
Well, you're looking at me and I'm smiling, because when you say the word kindness, so many things come to mind. I think of the man sitting to the right of me, my husband, who is probably the most genuinely kind person. I think kindness is something you do for someone else that makes them smile, a genuine smile that's just for them.
And Greg, what does kindness mean to you?
That's a tough one. I personally believe kindness is one of those almost duties that we have to do to make the world right. And so as a result, every single thing that you do, just helping somebody up or moving the shopping cart, those little pieces of kindness make the world better.
Great. Thank you both. And, pardon.
Quite
Tracy, at this point, I'd love to hear your story as you envision sharing it with us today.
Absolutely. I have quite the story. In 2006, during Labor Day weekend, I was at home with my two little kids. I had an 18-month-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. We were all in the bathroom, the three of us. They were going to get ready for going to bed, and I was folding clothes, like a typical career mom who's multitasking. And I walked over to wash their hair, and right in front of them, I had a full grand mal seizure. And I fell, and my head hit the porcelain sink, and then fell forward, and my head hit the iron tub right in front of them, and then fell down to the tile floor and had a grand mal seizure. And that includes everything that a seizure includes: shaking, vomiting, losing control of your body, and losing everything. You pass out. When I woke up, my 4-year-old was naked and wet and trying to pick me up, and my 18-month-old was pouring water over my head. And that's the beginning of my story. I was brought to the hospital, St. Francis, here in Hartford, and was feeling good. My best friend was with me, Jill, and my sister came down to spend time with me, Jen, because my parents were away. And we were sitting in the emergency room kind of laughing, going, oh my God, you're dehydrated, or you've lost too much weight, or you're pregnant. That's what you think at 35 years old. And the head of the ER walked out after about an hour and a half with this huge film of my brain and said, no wonder you had a seizure. You have a giant brain tumor. And we all looked at each other like we were 4-year-olds going, wait, you can't tell us this. My parents aren't here. It was the last line of a joke. You have a brain tumor. And I remember trying to pull the needle out of my arm going, okay, I don't have time for this. I have to go make dinner. I got to go. Give me the pill. What do I take? And they said, we have to bring you upstairs. You're going to have brain surgery. Yeah, that was fun. So I did have brain surgery, and I woke up paralyzed and was told I had brain cancer. There's no description to waking up paralyzed with brain cancer. So I won't even waste your time. Eventually, I did make it home. I had to go to the rehab hospital for quite a while to get some use of my left side back so I could actually go to my own home and be me again and take care of my children and my family. And, in my head, I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to clean the house, walk the dog. None of that happens. So I got home and I started practicing how to go up and down stairs and how to cut food because everything became new again and hard again. But I was me and I said, okay, I'll figure all this out and I'll go back to work. Unfortunately, this was September of 2006. In October of 2006, my husband left. And I became a single, uninsured mother of 2 little kids and no job. So my wonderful parents, who had lived in West Hartford with, came over and they said, okay, this is how we do this. The 3 of us, we're going to take care of these kids. We're going to take care of the house. We're going to move forward as a family, which is what my family always did. And I couldn't drive anymore. So my father was driving me and my kids around. And my mother was taking care of everything that needed to get taken care of, doctor's appointments and bills and life planning and divorce planning. And my father drove me and my 2 kids off one day in November. So it was September. My husband left in October. November, my parents came. It was right before Thanksgiving, and my father drove my kids and myself off to the house and dropped us off and drove away. And the next phone call I got was, you have to get to Hartford Hospital. Dad's been in a car accident. He's been airlifted to Hartford Hospital. So I got a ride, because of course I couldn't drive, to Hartford Hospital. And by the time I had gotten there, he had died. So that was 90 days. 90 days. I say that now still, 90 days. Because I remember going, how, and my friends, how can this happen to one person? And I'd be actually kind of smiling, going, this can't all be happening to just one me. Like, who does this? But it did. And my mother and my sister and I sort of said, okay, where do we go now? And I said, well, I have brain cancer. And if I have to fight cancer, I have to find my community because I need some strength here. Because radiation and chemo and hair loss, I'm not ready for all this. Not with 2 babies, not with no husband, not without a car. I said, I need to find my pink ribbon community because I didn't even know what the color of brain cancer was. By the way, it's gray, which is such a depressing color anyway, but I call it now sort of silver. I wanted to go to group meetings. I wanted to walk in walks. I wanted to wear jewelry. I wanted to read books. I wanted to open up yogurt tops that had gray on it and knew I was supporting brain cancer. And none of that existed. And when I would tell people that I had brain cancer, they would hug me and say, God, I'm so sorry. And I thought, what the hell is that? You're sorry? Come on, show me, like, give me some hope here. Put a smile on. Tell me where I can go, what I can do. And nobody did that. And I met other people that had brain cancer, and they seemed to be talking about their stints in their brains or their shunts or the pills they were taking or their seizures or planning for their funerals. And I was like, okay, I was in advertising and marketing my whole life. Brain cancer needs a facelift. We need to remarket brain cancer. And I said, who could do that better than I could? So I grabbed another young friend of mine, 35 years old, 2 kids with brain cancer, and my mom and the cute guy sitting next to me, and my amazing friend Jen, who had brain cancer, and Stacy and Kim. They had lost their mom to brain cancer, and their husbands. It was like a family thing. And I shared a bagel with Jen at Brugger's Bagels in Avon, Connecticut. I called her. I said, please, come have a bagel with me. Come talk to me. And somehow I convinced her. I said, we could change this for every other person. Not one other person should get diagnosed and have nowhere to go and no face to look at and but he'd ask a question of like, will my hair come back because they're going to radiate my head? Or will I remember my kids' names? Or will I go out to dinner with my friends? Or will I have sex again? All these questions that everybody could ask other people. But when you have brain cancer, everybody's like, here's cookies. It's like, cookies? No, I want to go out to dinner. Like, give me real hope. Give me real information. And I said, Jen, we could do this. And she goes, okay. And all of us got together in Jen and Andy's living room, and let's do something. My father and mother had been in the golf industry. Jen's husband played golf. Stacy's husband played golf. They said, we'll throw a golf tournament. And my mother, I hate saying this word, but knew Donald Trump. Trump gave us foursomes at his courses. All these big people donated huge prizes. And we threw a golf tournament. And it sold out. And people came. It was at Wintonberry Hills Golf Course. And I spoke. And I said, look at this. You are now all ambassadors for brain cancer because now you've met me and seen me. And so when somebody gets diagnosed that that has brain cancer, tell them about me. Give them that hope because they now are getting cookies and going, oh, so sorry. I want to hug them and be like, come on, I'll tell you how this goes. And that's how it started. And now all these years later, we've raised so much money. We work with Yale, Hartford Hospital, St. Francis, Connecticut Children's Medical Center, St. Vincent's. We, have students who go to school for neuro-oncology. We give scholarships. We've paid for people's funerals. We pay their health care bills. We pay to get them driven to chemo. We bought something called Cinema Vision goggles at Connecticut Children's Medical Center in St. Francis because when you have a brain cancer or a brain tumor, MRIs become part of your everyday life. You get them every month, every 60 days. I got as far as every 90 days, which is funny because my whole tragedy started in 90 days. And now I say to Greg, I live my life in increments of 90 days. And every 90 days, I get to find out, do I get another 90 days? And there's a life in there. I didn't know there would be a life in 90 days. And so when people get diagnosed, what I try to tell them is, aren't you lucky that you got diagnosed the day you had your seizure and that you didn't die? Because now I was only given a 3 to 5 year life expectancy. In September, I'll be a 10-year survivor. I am a miracle upon miracles. But for every day you aren't dying, it's every day you're living. And you have a choice. And you could easily curl up in a ball in your closet and take your morphine and take your sleeping pills and take your Ativan. And you could be really upset and angry and ask why every day on your way to chemo, every day on your way to radiation, every day that you don't feel good. Or you could have breakfast in bed. You could sit on your front lawn and drink your coffee. There's a lot of things you can't do anymore, and that sucks. But if you waste all this time thinking about, I'm so upset that I can't do these things anymore, then you're wasting that time that you still have. What I'd rather people do is go have dinner with a friend you haven't seen in forever. Go make an apple pie with your mom. Go see a movie with your new husband, who's sitting next to me, by the way, who was my boyfriend from when I was 19, who showed back up after my husband left and said, I'll take care of you until you die and raise your kids with you. You want to ask about kindness. That's heartbreaking kindness and strength. So if this is about kindness, kindness is about teaching people how to live when there's no more life left. Teaching them how to enjoy every single minute so that the people you're leaving behind will remember that you lived every minute. And there's nothing kinder to give to everybody in your life than leaving them knowing you lived. Sorry, everybody's crying here. Sorry.
It's all right. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
You're very welcome.
As far as, in hearing what you shared with us and little bits like there are, whether it's what little window we have into knowing about the relationship that you two have and the inspiration that you've taken from Greg in recent years, perhaps, maybe even earlier years. But it certainly seems clear that even very early on in, this whole experience for you, within those first 90 days, like you already had the, a sense within yourself to already value some of the things that have carried you through this time period, perhaps, and what I'm hearing. Like,
I think I absolutely had no idea how to do any of this. I had a full-time career. My husband had a full-time career. I had 2 dogs, 2 kids, a house to take care of. I was trying to keep everything running. And at the end of the day, I'd go to bed going, oh God, I made it through another day. Nobody anticipates your whole world crumbling. In 90 days, to have the 3 Ds, diagnosis, divorce, death. 90 days of losing everything, your future, your family, your life, your everything. And then to go, I have 2 little people looking at me, and I have to show them in a very short amount of time, because I didn't think I'd have many years, how to be strong, how to have something horrible happen to them because their mom was going to die, and how to say, okay, how can I make this okay? What can I do to smile? What can I do to be strong? Because they weren't going to have enough people around them to teach them that. So I had to do that. And by teaching them was, look, mommy can put on a wig and look pretty. Or mommy can put her hair back in under a baseball hat and you don't see that ugly scar. And mommy can put on lipstick and she looks healthy. And mommy can walk to the bus stop and it's exhausting, but I can wave goodbye to them on the bus. It's the smallest things that you show people in a life that helps you figure out how to get up every day.
Is there any particular question coming to your mind already, Dan?
Let's see if I can formulate this. You just talked about how you could show your kids like that strength. Can you talk a little bit more about how you experienced other people's generosity that might have helped you, have some strength to go through this process?
Absolutely. What I have found, which is surprising, look, you guys, I think, are younger than we are. I'll be 46 in August. And I grew up in an era where there was no computers. There was no social media. You only knew who you knew. If you passed somebody a note, they had the note. If you called them on the phone, now you can talk to so many people. So I have a site called Blogopy, which means blog plus therapy. And I do a lot of writing and I do a lot of public speaking. And it seems that when I'm talking about all this stuff, which I find to be very simple things, because as a mother, you have a role, and as a wife, you have a role. And when you get sick and you start a charity, you have a role to play as a leader, as somebody who teaches. Every day, I get letters to the house. I get pictures. I get gifts of somehow I've touched someone, and I don't know them. I got a cape sewn for me the other day. I do these videos, and I call myself the brain tumor bitch, because it is a powerful word. And what I say every time I do them is that I own my cancer. I love who I am and where I am, and I say that with pride and with passion, because once you can really own your cancer, you can wear it differently. And I was talking about how I love that word, and it doesn't embarrass me or make me feel like, anything less. And I wish I had a cape that I could show. I wear it with a big B on the back, because it's a power. It's super. It's wonderful. Well, a gift bag showed up on my doorstep the other day with a cape with a big silver B on the back of it. And I'm going to an event on Saturday night to speak. And I said, I'm wearing the cape because I want people who think they're at the worst moment in their life to know only they can turn it around. And it takes them sometimes it takes somebody else to say, you're the only one that can change the way you're feeling. And it's not a journey. It can start right now. What are you doing right now what are you doing after this interview? Where are you going? You might have stuff going on that I don't know about, but you might look at all those things very differently, because it's in 1 second you can change the view of how you face things and how you take on things and how you tackle things. It's one moment that can change your life. So I'm hoping that in these incredible 10 years, I've changed lots of these people's lives I will never meet, but they've given me little things that I keep in a trunk. I have jewelry and letters and sweatshirts and T-shirts and now a cape. That's a life. That's a life. Thank God I didn't get 3 to 5 years. Thank God I've gotten 10, because that trunk is so full.
If there were, you've already mentioned some things that might wind up being part of the answer to this, and perhaps not. But if there were a takeaway that you now sitting here after like the entirety of the experiences that you've had, the years leading up to the last 10 and these last 10, if there were a particular message that you hope your children would take away at this point, what would that be?
First of all, I would want them to know how crazy in love I was with them, and that they made this journey for me. They were what made this, because I would have given up. this is a hard fight. And then you tack on all those other things, paralysis, your husband leaving, your father dying, everything gone, everything. But you can't quit. My father always used to say suicide was a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Well, I've got a permanent problem, but the permanent solution isn't the option right now because look at what I have to do. These 2 kids are going to go on and live a life, whether I'm here or not. I can, however, be the person that teaches them how to be leaders, not only leaders who lead their own lives and choose how they want to face adversity, hopefully by my example, but they'll be leaders later in life, and they're going to have to teach people how to do the same thing. They're kind of like my minions. I want them to go out into the world and try to have the same outlook that I only achieved after, my life fell apart. Too bad it took me 35 years. They're now 10 and 14. We went to New York City the other day, and we were walking down the streets, and we gave each kid a $10 bill to buy some tchotchke on the street. And my son gave the $10 bill to a homeless person. Drop the fork. I'm out. Game over. Done. I mean, done. I did it. Yay me. Yay brain cancer.
Yeah. Is there anything at this point that we haven't spoken about in this conversation, loosely rooted in kindness and giving and generosity? Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll tell you really what I'm working on now, because it has transcended sort of into another journey, one that, again, I didn't expect I'd be on, but came out of this brain tumor. I was doing radiation, 6 full weeks every day of brain radiation. For anybody who's never had brain radiation, it sucks. And my oncologist gave me a prescription for Marinol, which is the fake version of medical marijuana. It's only CBD. It has no THC in it. And said, try this, because I was taking Percocet, Vicodin, morphine, Ativan, sleeping pills, which is typically what they give to cancer patients. And I was taking them dutifully. And in order to get rid of the pain, I was taking not 1 Percocet, not 2 Percocet, at times 4, 6 at a time, because the pain is unbearable. And anybody who has cancer, who has real terrible pain, understands what I mean. The pain is what's unlivable. The cancer you can live with. The pain and the fear. If you can control those, you can have a life, a quality of life, until you don't have a life anymore. I had no more quality of life. I was in bed. I was isolated. I was really doped up, and not doped up in a good way, doped up in a, I can't walk to the bathroom by myself, doped up in a, I'm not sure who I'm, It wasn't a quality of life that any 30-year-old woman with 2 kids should be living, that wanted to live. And my amazing doctor, Dr. Salner at Hartford Hospital, is the one who gave me the prescription and took me aside and said, I'll never, ever admit to this, but go get some marijuana and smoke it. That day changed my life. I went off all my pills after that. I started using medical marijuana and got off every painkiller, got off my sleeping pills, got off my antidepressants, every pill that they'd put me on that was making me everything from nauseous and shaky and not being able to go to the bathroom. I came off all of that, and I started using medical marijuana, and I would get out of bed, and I could do my kids' laundry, and I could cook, and I could go out on a date, and I could be with my friends. It changed my life because it gave me back quality of life, which gave me back a reason to live. And so the CBS Evening News asked if I would go on national television and tell my story. Now, here I am, the West Hartford soccer mom. I am the antithesis of, what you would think of as somebody who, smokes marijuana. And they said, but that's why. So I went on the CBS Evening News with Jeff Glor, and I asked Dr. Andy Salner from Hartford Hospital to come on with me to sort of validate me, so I didn't get arrested when they left. And he did it. He risked his whole practice. He risked everything. And we went on and we went national. And the laws started to change because I said, look, I'm not sitting home wearing purple glasses and beads, watching Cheech and Chong, doing bong hits and eating Cool Ranch Doritos all day. My children have clean clothes to wear to school. We eat dinner at the dinner table and not in my bed. That's what this is about, giving people quality of life whose quality of life has been stolen from their cancer. And mine was the worst. I have the cancer no cancer patient wants. I have brain cancer, I have the, ooh, no, we don't want that one. That's what I have. And when people look at me, they don't see brain cancer. They see a woman who's happily married and whose hair covers up her, bald spot. And her kids are now 10 and 14. And who has tons of friends and does tons of events and raises a ton of money and just got nominated to sit on the American Board of Internal Medicine. Who in a million years gets that? So that's really cool.
It is. Thank you so much, Tracy and Greg, for coming to talk with us today. It's been a pleasure to hear your story.
We've loved being here. Thank you.